In recent years, especially recent weeks since the release of The Acolyte, there's been a popular complaint about how Disney is handling Star Wars and the Jedi in particular. The complaint goes something like,
Disney doesn't understand Star Wars. They're trying to make the Jedi the bad guys for their own agenda.
yes, Disney does have an agenda when it comes to Star Wars. It's a very simple agenda, and it is to make as much money as possible. That's just the nature of business. However, to say that Disney doesn't understand the Jedi, or Star Wars in general, is a complete fallacy. I think that they understand both better than the average fan. In fact, I think Disney has simply extended a plotline from the prequels and Clone Wars, as well as the original trilogy, and used it to connect The Acolyte to The Last Jedi. Obviously, that's everyone's favorite Disney Star Wars release. Now, this plotline is pretty simple. Are you ready for it? Here it is. The Jedi aren't perfect. That's it. The Jedi, as individuals, are just as flawed as anyone else in the galaxy far, far away. And as an organization, the Jedi are just as corrupt as any other group made up of flawed individuals. Think about it. One of the first things that Obi-Wan Kenobi tells Luke on Tatooine is that Darth Vader, a pupil of his who turned to evil, betrayed and murdered Anakin Skywalker. And I know that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series shed some light on this later, but bear with me for a bit, okay? In the next film, Empire Strikes Back, Vader tells Luke that Kenobi has lied to him, and that he, Vader, is really Luke's father. Now, Luke is understandably upset by this. His entire worldview is shaken. Up to this point, Yoda and Obi-Wan have been training Luke to confront and potentially kill his own father, and here's the important part, without revealing the truth about Vader's identity. That is hardly the approach a good and noble organization or good and noble individuals would take. Don't you agree? Setting someone up to unknowingly commit patricide is, I would like to imagine, at the very least, borderline evil in most civilizations. Going back to the prequels, which were our next releases, what do we see from the Jedi? Well, in Revenge of the Sith, they withhold information about their ability to use the Force from the Chancellor and the Senate. Now, this is important information. If the Jedi are supposed to be keepers of the peace, and now they're functioning as soldiers, their abilities are incredibly important to the security of the Republic. Withholding this information jeopardizes the war effort and the state of galactic politics. Let's rewind a little bit in the timeline, but move forward in the release schedule. In Clone Wars, Season 6, Episode 10, The Lost One, the Jedi learned that the clone army was created at the order of the Sith, Count Dooku. And what do they do with this information? They hide it in order to maintain appearances. Do you see a common element here? The Jedi are willing to hide the truth, commit lies of omission, or even offer alternative facts, truths from a certain point of view, in order to maintain their place in the seat of galactic power. This isn't because they're inherently evil. They're just imperfect beings and an imperfect organization, trying to hold on to their place in the established status quo. Let's look at the Acolyte now. Vernestra Rwoh hides the investigation into the deaths of Jedi from the High Council. And then she fabricates a story for the Senate investigators. Why? In order to keep the Order's political opponents at bay. So for at least 130 years, if not longer, the Jedi have been skewing the truth or outright lying in order to keep the Senate off their backs and hold on to what authority they have. Now, we look back on all of this through the lens of Luke Skywalker's speech about the fall of the Jedi in Episode 8, The Last Jedi. What did he say there? Now that they're extinct, the Jedi are romanticized, deified. But if you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure, hypocrisy, hubris. Yeah, that tracks. It's consistent with the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, and yes, even the Acolyte. He goes on. At the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise, create the Empire, and wipe them out. It was a Jedi Master who was responsible for the training and creation of Darth Vader. This is also very accurate. It was Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi Master, who insisted that Anakin be trained. With his dying breath, he forced Obi-Wan to take on that responsibility, even though Kenobi probably was far from ready for it. Luke continues, and I became legend. For many years, there was balance, and then I saw Ben, my nephew, with that mighty Skywalker blood. And in my hubris, I thought I could train him. I could pass on my strengths. Han was Han about it, but Leia trusted me with her son. I took him and a dozen students and began a training temple. By the time I realized that I was no match for the darkness rising in him, it was too late. I went to confront him, and he turned on me. He must have thought I was dead. When I came to, the temple was burning. He had vanished with a handful of my students and slaughtered the rest. Leia blamed Snoke, but it was me. I failed, because I was Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master, a legend. Luke tried to continue the tradition of the Jedi Order, but because he had been fundamentally trained in the ways of their hypocrisy and hubris, he was basically set up to fail from the beginning. There was really no way that a single individual, trained by the masters who oversaw the final collapse of the Jedi Order, could overcome all of that organization's historical baggage and rebuild on the foundation that it gave him. And you know what? Disney understands this. Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Leslie Headland, and everyone else involved with the production of Star Wars for Disney understands that the Jedi of the Republic were doomed to fail. And because of that, so was Luke and his new Jedi Order. However, because Luke exposed the failures of the original Jedi Order, we can have a new hope in the order that Rey Skywalker will theoretically build going forward. But I'll get into that another time. For now, what do you think? Do you agree with my take? Or do you have a different theory? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, may the Force be with you as you live long and prosper.